But today I would like to ask Nika to read 4 lines actually, that are so beautiful and so powerful, and they tell us so much. So, Nika, if you would read those 4 lines. Those lines that have always touched my soul immediately.
I can read some lines on Russian language.
All right.
О Савитри, ты сила духа моего, глас, возвещающий бессмертие слова, лик истины на времени путях, указывающий душам человека маршруты к Богу. Это Book2. But I need read from one book. What do you think?
Yeah, the line would begin with a magic leverage suddenly is caught, and it ends with transcendent force. So let us begin now.
Yes, I will begin. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the world Inneffable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force.
And we'll take this for the moment because it is so filled with beauty and it tells us so much of what can be done. So let us go through words first, because words are what Sri Aurobindo had to use to bring down from the heights the force that he wanted. And each word was consciously entered into Savitri. There are no extraneous words. There are no words that don't belong or that emphasize or amplify a line. Each word has a power. So the first word we would look at here is a leverage. A magic leverage suddenly is caught. Well, the leverage is a strategic advantage, a power to act effectively. So that magic leverage, that power to act effectively, that advantage, suddenly is caught. And what does it do? It moves the veiled Ineffable's timeless will. Sri Aurobindo speaks so much about the ineffable. And from the Life Divine, I can quote just a few lines because otherwise it could take up a half an hour just to speak on the ineffable. He says, the absolute is for us the ineffable. And he capitalizes ineffable. Then he says a transcendent bliss, capitalizing the B of bliss, unimaginable and inexpressible by the mind and speech, is the nature of the ineffable. Now, when I asked Nolini about capitalization, he told me that it is when Sri Aurobindo capitalizes something, it is the essence of the thing. So a magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled Ineffable's timeless will. And what happens as a result? a prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Now, the word force here is capitalized. And I have to quote something from the lexicon, from Sri Aurobindo. He says, this force that we feel is the universal force of the divine. And again, he capitalizes force. There is so much from Sri Aurobindo on the divine force, the universal force, and the cosmic force, that it is well worth our time to look up these definitions as well. They can all be found in the lexicon under the title Force, and they can be found in our website, Mother and SriAurobindo.in. So we see that these three things, a prayer, a master act, and a king idea, king, a royal idea, can link man's strength to a transcendent force. And he says, then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent, all-powerful. And then he's going to change again and tell us what things seem to be now. But we always have to remember that even when Sri Aurobindo shows us what we could say, the ignorant side or the darker side, seemingly, there is always light. And that will come as we continue. So we should not think that everything is as it seems. And he even writes, all now seems nature's massed machinery. And again, nature is capitalized, telling us that this is the divine nature in the evolution. And what is that massed machinery? An endless servitude to material rule. Servitude is clearly the condition of a slave. We are slaves to material rule. And long determination's rigid chain. This rigid chain of determination guides most of our lives, or it has, especially in our youth, middle age, whatever. But determination is a fixed direction or a tendency towards some object or end. So it is not only negative, although here it seems to be, determination's rigid chain, her firm and changeless habits, aping law. To ape something is to imitate it, to mimic it. So we have nature's massed machinery, which is an endless slavery to material rule. And this long determination, this fixed direction towards an object or end, is like a rigid chain, because it's fixed not only by karma and by habit, by our choice, but nature's firm and changeless habits imitate law. Again, Sri Aurobindo capitalizes the L, law. Very, very important. And we've spoken of law before, and you can look that up also in Sri Aurobindo. He has many, many things to say about the law. So there's still a comma here. We've only begun with all now seems nature's mass machinery, semicolon, and endless servitude and long determination, comma, her firm and changeless habits, aping law, comma, her empire of unconscious, deft device. Something that is deft is, dexterous, nimble, skillful. All of these things annul the claim of man's free human will. What are these things? Well, we've just seen them all. This massed machinery of nature, this servitude to the material life, the rigid chain of determination, whichever direction we're going in, the firm and changeless habits that imitate law, nature's empire of unconscious, dexterous, nimble, skillful device. All of these things annul the claim of man's free human will. Notice the word free human will here, period. So that sentence ends. And then he hits us pretty hard here. He too is a machine amid machines. A piston pumps out the shapes of thought. A beating heart cuts out emotions' modes. An insentient energy fabricates a soul. Wow. Insentient, of course, is without feeling, sensation, or even consciousness. Well, we can understand that. We see it in people around us. We've experienced it probably in ourselves, that our thoughts are not really our thoughts. They keep coming into us. They can be stopped. Sri Aurobindo did it in 3 days. It can take us lifetimes or many years, but it can be done. So the brain no longer becomes a piston, punching out these shapes of thought, pumping them out, and a beating heart that cuts out emotions' modes. Don't we always react in the same way to certain people, certain circumstances? We have our emotions. Are we ever free from those emotions? Can we see, even in the midst of evil and hate and error, the truth that shines behind them? And an insentient energy fabricates a soul. It manufactures a soul. He says, then he continues though, or the figure of the world reveals the signs of a tide chance, repeating her old steps in circles around matter's binding posts. Oh, what a powerful, powerful thought. Oh, so this figure of the world that we see today, and we see it very clearly today with our politicians and our countries vying for power, nuclear supremacy, control over their people. It reveals the signs of a kind of tide chance. And here Sri Aurobindo capitalizes chance. We know there is no chance in our yoga, but the world reveals the signs of a tide chance that repeats her old steps. So it's a repetition. And there are these many quotes that if we haven't learned something, we are destined to repeat it. Repeating her old steps in circles around matters, capital M again, matters, binding posts. Now, Sri Aurobindo hyphenates the word binding posts. And I'd like to go into that for a few moments. Posts are large poles or stakes that are set in the ground. But when there is a prefix, it is understood that the posts are used for something. Here, to bind. So Sri Aurobindo makes binding posts hyphenated, one word. And so this chants that repeats her old steps in circles around matters binding posts might lead us to think of the bullocks threshing grain. The binding posts are there and they are yoked together and they have to go around in circles to thresh the grain around these binding posts. I know we haven't gotten very far, but this is so important to understand. A random series of inept events to which reason lends elusive sense is here. I'll stop right there for a moment. This random series of inept events. Inept means not fitting or inappropriate events. There are so many of them that occur in everyday life. And yet reason lends them an elusive sense. Reason says, yeah, this is okay. This event is okay. We understand this event. Or the empiric life's instinctive search. Or a vast ignorant mind's colossal work. Now you see, the empiric life is the life of our previous science, which said that everything is provable only by experience or by experiment. So we have an instinctive search in this empiric life. We would like to know why this happens, why that happens, and why this cannot happen. And so we look towards material existence to give us the answers. And therefore, it's a colossal work of the ignorant mind, because it cannot get past this empiric attitude. We're starting to get there now. We're starting to get there with these new theories and with this acknowledgement that there is a perhaps supreme force, even though they won't name him God or soul. But then Sri Aurobindo says something very different. And this is what I wanted to impress upon you, that it seems for a while so dark. But it was not dark in those first lines that Nika read. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A prayer, a master act, a king idea. But then Sri Aurobindo goes and tells us what is really happening now with humanity. And he's very, very clear on it. There are many lines we've just read. And he says next, but wisdom comes and vision grows within. Then nature's instrument crowns himself her king. Nature again capitalized. And what does he do? He feels his witnessing self and conscious power. Well, Sri Aurobindo and Mother both speak a lot about the witness self. The self that stands back and watches while we act. Vladimir, could you give us some Vedic insights into all that we've just read?
Right. Well, one thing comes to my mind with binding posts is yupas in a Vedic tradition or the Brahmanic tradition or the sacrificial posts. They are the posts where the sacrificial animal is bound to be sacrificed. So these binding posts are where always the offering is made to our being, kind of maintaining its existence and life force. In circles round matter's binding posts. It's our tribute of the spirit, of the life energy to the material existence here, to maintain life at all. We need to do this constant sacrifice. So we are bound like those sacrificial animals to this post, and there is a triple cord which is binding us. It is the cord of the mind, vital, and the physical, binding to this post, to this particular form, to maintain and to develop this form with a constant sacrifice of the spiritual energy. And this form is evolving slowly and becoming more and more instrumental, more and more, suitable to be used by the spirit. And this is this post. And there are these yupas. When the dawn comes in the Veda, then she reveals the posts, the sacrificial posts on the path. So we have to move from one sacrifice to another, through one possible offering of the spirit to the matter, to the other. And we never saw it in this way, because we think that when we do the sacrifice, we offer always to the gods. But it is the opposite. The gods are offered to matter. The higher spiritual powers are brought down by Agni into the material formation of our body. And this is a constant, ongoing sacrifice to matter, to material manifestation. So it's some allusion is behind, some kind of vision. That's why he's using this beautiful word, binding posts, which are binding our spirit to material manifestation. This is beautiful. And of course, with the witness, it is definitely the most used image of the Purusha, who is the Sakshi, who is always viewing what Prakriti does and gives her all the sanctions. He is not only Sakshi, he is not only the witness who is not sanctioning the movement of Prakriti, but he gives a subtle sanction. As Sri Aurobindo says, he says yes or no to the movement of Prakriti. And then she follows it or not. If he says no, not to follow, she will drop the movement. But she always prepares for him. She wants him to like her. She is his executive power, executrix of all his consciousness. So she will always try to please Purusha, to make him happy, to make him acknowledge her work. So he is not only a Sakshi, he is also Anumanta, the one who always sanctions her movements. And at the end, he reveals himself as Ishvara, as Sri Aurobindo says, who takes all in his hands, all the Prakriti, and she becomes Shakti. She is no more different from him. That's why we are tied to these binding posts, because till that moment, when Prakriti becomes Shakti and we become Ishvara, there is a long journey.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. But wisdom comes, and vision grows within. Then nature's instrument crowns himself her king. He feels his witnessing self and conscious power. His soul steps back and sees the light supreme. A Godhead stands behind the brute machine. This truth broke in a triumph of fire. A victory was won for God in man. The deity revealed its hidden face. So the Godhead is always standing behind us. And this truth that breaks in this triumph of fire, Agni, therefore a victory was won for us and for God in man. The deity revealed its hidden face. The great world mother now in her arose. A living choice reversed fate's cold, dead turn, affirmed the spirit's tread on circumstance. Again, Sri Aurobindo capitalizes circumstance. So, circumstance here is a condition, a fact, or a detail having some bearing on an event. And what happens then? It pressed back the senseless, dire, revolving wheel. We've talked about the wheel before. I'll give you some of Sri Aurobindo's great insights into the wheel. Here is one of his definitions. The infinite, capital I, pauses always in the finite. The finite arrives always in the infinite. This is the wheel that circles forever through time and eternity. How beautiful. And so this wheel now is pressed back, and the mute march of necessity is stopped. And then he says, a flaming warrior from the eternal peaks, empowered to force the door denied and closed, smote from death's visage its dumb absolute, and burst the bounds of consciousness and time. Death's visage. The visage is usually the face, with reference to some aspect of the face. And we have the word dumb, and I wanted to go into that with you just briefly. This word in Savitri can be understood in two ways. The first way is lacking the power of speech, but the second way is producing no sound, silent, mute. It is never used in a negative and common sense of stupid or ignorant. Never in Savitri. Only those two meanings. I'll go over them again. Lacking the power of speech. 2, producing no sound, silent, mute. The flaming warrior from the eternal peaks, who is empowered, given the power to force the door that has always been denied and closed, smote from death's visage its dumb absolute, and therefore it burst the bounds of consciousness and time. End of Canto 2. Okay, if anyone has any questions or comments, we would be happy to have you share them. Or Perhaps, Vladimir, you could speak about these last lines also.
I have a question, please.
Yes, Sanjay.
So when Sri Aurobindo means to use ignorance or ignorant, he uses the word specifically, does he? And not when he uses dumb. It doesn't imply that he's referring to something as ignorant or unconscious.
No, and I could actually give you quite a lot on that, and that's a very good question. So let's go through that for a moment.
Because I've been reading Savitri, and I've always been under the impression that the word not refers to stupid, but it refers to ignorance.
There's a lot. So let's go through it first. Sri Aurobindo gives us in the Life Divine, ignorance is the absence of the divine eye of perception, which gives us the sight of the supramental truth. It is the non-perceiving principle in our consciousness, as opposed to the truth-perceiving conscious vision and knowledge. Now that's in the Life Divine. Mother, well, there are many more things in the Life Divine, but let me give you what Mother says. Ignorance means avidya, the separative consciousness and the egoistic mind and life that flow from it, and all that is natural to the separative consciousness and the egoistic mind and life. This ignorance, and she capitalizes it also, is the result of a movement by which the cosmic intelligence, capital I, separated itself from the light of the supermind, the divine gnosis, and lost the truth of being, truth of divine consciousness, truth of force and action, truth of ananda. As a result, instead of a world of integral truth and divine harmony, created in the light of the divine gnosis, we have a world founded on the part truths of an inferior cosmic intelligence, in which all is half truth, half error. All in the consciousness of this creation is either limited or else perverted by separation from the integral light. Even the truth it perceives is only a half knowledge. Therefore, it is called the ignorance. And from the Life Divine again, all ignorance is a penumbra which environs an orb of knowledge. Oh, so beautiful. He has other things in the essays in philosophy and yoga, and I'll read the last one. Knowledge is no doubt the knowledge of the One, the realization of the being. Ignorance is a self-oblivion of being, the experience of separateness in the the experience of separateness in the multiplicity, and a dwelling or circling in the ill-understood maze of becomings.
One can actually explain this. There is no really big difference between what you, Sanjana, suggested as ignorant, but it is quintessential ignorance, that very thing which makes separation possible, that dumbness, that, impenetrable something which is not permitting the being to be together with another being. There is some fundamental separative force involved, and that quintessential separative force is expressed in this word, dumb. as total silence, as something impenetrable, something which is holding us apart. So in a sense, it's more than ignorance. For Sri Aurobindo, ignorance is already charged with some semi-light. Yes, it's light which is entering into our darkness and creates this partial knowledge, knowledge in time and space. For example, knowledge how to play football. Yeah, it is avidya, or how to learn something, language, or mathematics. It's avidya because it's partial to this particular, applicable only to this time and into this context. But that dumb, even in the word etymologically, if you go deeper, dumb, yeah, it is like something is really like a dump, which is holding you away, which is built to stop the stream of the river, and separates you from the others. So,
I think Mother's so clear when she says it's a half knowledge.
Right. Because according to Sri Aurobindo, there is a deeper inconscient, there is subconscient and inconscient, which is much darker night. In the Veda, they speak about two nights, and Sri Aurobindo comments, there is a starry night, and he will use this image in the Savitri, starry night, in which we rest, in which we assimilate our experiences of light into this binding post, into the matter, into the material consciousness. But there is a deeper night, darker night, which we will be afraid to meet, because there we may lose ourselves, will be diluted into the darkness. It is so dense that even soul is afraid to enter into those realms.
And that we will see in Book 2.
Yes. Descent into night, and the mother
Thank
of
you.
evil. There is one beautiful passage here I may mention also, is this: a victory was won for God in man. This in man is a fundamental Vedic idea that man represents here this yajamana, the sacrificial being, the soul, around whom all this event is taking place. All the forces are circling around this yajamana, who invokes higher powers to enter and to help him grow and to occupy his context, that means body and surroundings. So we are kind of colonizers, as Sri Aurobindo somewhere says, yes? We are colonizing the place where we are not. So we have two parts in us. Some part is less conscious and other is more conscious. And there is a constant colonization of the more conscious part, or penetration to the less conscious part. So this is called sacrifice, and it is done through man as yajamana, as the center of that sacrifice. So without man there would be no victory of God. That's why man is called the Son of God. The soul is the Son of God here. Through whom...
There would also be no evolution.
Yes, there would be no evolution.
We had one more comment before we go.
Yeah, so yesterday there was this part I read where the word colonist is used. It's on page 22. His was a spirit that stooped from larger spheres into a province of ephemeral sight, a colonist from immortality.
Absolutely. So you have immediately confirmation of this vision. It is all binding together. It is all very, very unifying and one knowledge. You will find confirmation in every line. The presumption of this knowledge is shining through all the lines in Savitri. So it's very good to dig in and try to understand what Sri Aurobindo means to say, wants to say.
Namaste.